Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, first part thereof for the 21st of August 2025. My goodness, summer is already coming to a close. It's sad. Sorry this has taken so long for me to record for you. It turns out I desperately needed sleep. Who knew? Anyway, we have Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. 830 personnel taken out. That is lower than we have come to expect, although it's pretty much what we are seeing, what we have been seeing for the last week or so. One single tank, 5 troop-carrying AFVs, 41 artillery systems, yet again high in that category, 1 multiple launch rocket system and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. Good to see an anti-aircraft warfare system taken out. I'm wondering if that's the S-400 we're going to talk about in a minute. 114 vehicles and fuel tanks and a single piece of special equipment. So fairly standard numbers there. You see 315 for drones there. Last night saw a massive drone attack on Ukraine, 574. I've been talking about the lack of drones being sent over recently. We'll talk about those numbers in a wee while. And then we come on to a few, before we get on to Andrew Perpetua's loss list, let's look at a couple of personnel topics here in the Dobropilia direction. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, the Ukrainians have continued to conduct stabilization measures. So that's where the Russians had broken through the Ukrainian defensive lines with deep reconnaissance groups. We're trying to then fill in the breakthrough with exploitation troops. And then the Ukrainians came in and have been sending in some of their best troops to try and stop that. And they have been, I think, pretty successful in doing so. And it has led to, at least according to the General Staff, pinch of salt and all that, has led to quite a lot of Russian losses in the area. In the last 3 days alone, the irretrievable losses of occupiers amounted to 206 people in that region, in that sector, so that in total since August the 4th, 1,116 Russians have died or irretrievably lost. I guess that's, no, that is killed. It's a polite way of saying killed, because they then separate out medical losses, so injured, another 73, meaning 412 since August the 4th. And another single prisoner in the last 3 days, meaning 38 prisoners in total there. During the specified period, the following were destroyed and damaged. 3 tanks, in total 12. 3 armoured combat vehicles, 9 in total. 24 units of basically cars or motorcycles, making 124 in total. 12 guns, 30 in total. 35 drones, 126 in total during the operation as a result of search and strike actions. The settlements of Donetsk region of Gruzka, Rubizhne, Novodovodiane, Petrivka, Vesele, Zoloty Kolodyaz have been cleared of the enemy by Ukrainian forces. So that would suggest fairly successful counter actions by the Ukrainians there. The Russians taking quite a lot of losses. Really good news for the Ukrainians if that's all true. And they appear to have done a good job in taking some of those settlements back under their control, although only 1 prisoner taken over the last 3 days, I think, according to those stats. We have got a video here of quite a few prisoners. The Ukrainian military packs another batch of captured Russian infantry in the Donetsk region, but that could be a few days old. Not sure, but it suggests that the Ukrainians are definitely on the kind of offensive or maybe active defense there in that sector. Then we have, although, you know, them coming from the whole Donetsk region, it could be anywhere. You know, it's not just going to be what's taking place in the Dobropilia sector, but nonetheless, it probably is. Ukrainian airstrike here has hit a Russian command post in Korenovo in Kursk region. So that's a place where it seems you've got Rilsk and Lgov and Korenovo, where the Russians are using buildings for command nodes and troop accumulations. They're getting routinely hit, and it's often the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, so the Marines, the 155th that have been operating up in Kursk, have been absolutely hammered. Remember, they were the ones who had their entire command taken out in a strike previously. Well, here's another strike. Reports suggest commanders and personnel from Russia's 155th Naval Infantry Brigade were present at the time, so who knows what the actual battle damage assessment is from there, but if it's 155th, then that they've had such rotten luck, I guess it's not luck, is it? It's the Ukrainians doing a good job at taking out their command and control nodes. I would suggest that they've probably taken a hammering again. Talking about personnel losses, this is a Ukrainian troop experiencing cluster munitions here. So that is, yeah, pretty hairy stuff. Across the field there, you see, actually, it's not just, you know, bang, 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 bang. It's almost like it's an absolute wave of small explosions from the RBK 500 cluster bomb that was dropped there in Donetsk. I just thought I'd show that to you. That's a sort of munition that's going to harm personnel particularly. The Ukrainians obviously got hold of cluster munitions after the Americans allowed them, and I don't know if they still have access to any, since they are not getting those sorts of weapons. They're not getting the consistent aid packages from the US that they were before Trump took over. So okay, lost lists from Andrew Perpetua from the 20th, so yesterday. You can see the Russians losing an air defense system at the top there, so that's going to hurt. Other than that, look at the combat assets, hardly any, just 5. Compare that to the Ukrainians, losing an awful lot of, as we saw yesterday, MRAPs and mobility vehicles, Humvees, not too much of anything else, but it seems that they're still losing a number of these. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't have time to look into the details of where these are being lost, whether they are still, there are still videos coming out from Kursk region of like vehicles that were lost up there, whether this is happening in Sumy, or whether this is as a result of counterattacking in the Dobropilia direction. But you would sort of lose these vehicles mainly if you are attacking and moving troops into attacking positions. That's generally what's happened in the past. Anyway, let's go and look at the Ukrainian figures then, see if we can derive any conclusions. We've got a couple of bits of electronic warfare, a lot of surveillance and comms equipment and UGVs. I generally discount these at the moment as being lower value bits of equipment, generally speaking. We've got a boat there, artillery. We've got two S-22 Bogdan, a self-propelled gun being destroyed there. As I've said many times, you're going to see more of those on the list because they are making them at quite a rate. Then in APCs, we see a Snatch Land Rover destroyed. We've got a VAB damaged there, M113 abandoned. And then, goodness me, like almost 20 MRAPs. And we had a lot of MRAPs yesterday. So I'm interested. Maybe I'll reach out to Andrew and just ask him that. In fact, I might ask him now. So I'll see what he says to that. But as you can see, a lot of MRAPs here taken out by FPVs, abandoned, then hit by drones, taken out by Vandal drones, night vision drones, etc., etc. Many of them Max Pros, but actually the majority of them just undescribed. Infantry mobility vehicles, we've got Huskies, Humvees, Titans, and Novators. They are Titan DS infantry mobility vehicle. Where is this one from? Let's have a little look. Military vehicle tracker, Titan SDS 4x4. 7 of them being pledged, which 7 being delivered in December. So that's what they look like. UAE. It's a UAE APC. Goodness me, I remember now looking at this maybe a year ago or something. Built on a Toyota Land Cruiser 79 chassis, designed primarily for security forces. I wonder how they've got those. Wonder who's paid for those Titan DSs from the UAE. Interesting. Anyway, so quite a few of them on the list. I don't know what that tells you. And then we're down to ATVs. Ukrainians losing a few quads and a few motorcycles, and then typical amount of civilian vehicles. So a lot of infantry mobility vehicles for the Ukrainians lost. Now the Russians, very few combat assets at all, and this is the pattern we are seeing. You can paint this in a positive light because they just don't have them. They've already been destroyed, so they are now using ATVs and civilian vehicles is one way of interpreting that. A lot of motorcycles, as you can see, quads, motorcycle with electronic warfare, golf buggy as well. We've got quite a few civilian vehicles, and then as we go to the top, we have an air defense system, an S-300 V4 transporter erector launcher. We're going to show that in a second, taken out by Vampire drones, so a Baba Yaga octocopter or hexacopter, probably hexacopter, very heavy, sometimes even quadcopters with huge rotors and arms, dropping a significant ordnance on here an S300 V4. So that is a good bit of kit. That listing alone just far outstrips what the Ukrainians have lost, right? That is a massively valuable bit of kit. Then we have some artillery there, D30s, S60. We've got trucks, a single tank, undescribed, and then, as mentioned, all the other stuff. So Ukraine is losing more combat assets, but that S300 kind of changes things. I called it an S400 earlier, S300, S300V. So here we have a spectacular detonation of the S300V, as shown. Yeah, of course. I was literally on mute. I press play and it goes not onto mute. Typical. But anyway, exploding there in a pretty spectacular fashion. And that was that came out yesterday. So that's really good news. This is a very valuable bit of kit. So laser unit bombards valuable Russian S-300V air defense system. And then we have, yeah, here it is moving into place. So actually you've got footage of Ukrainian strikes on a rare 9A83 launcher from the S-300V surface-to-air missile system. The vehicle was caught in the open on a road while being loaded onto a trailer. The attack resulted in fire and immensely spectacular ammunition detonation from the 9A83's powerful 9M83 surface-to-air missiles. After the job was finished, a Ukrainian drone operator simply landed on the trailer cabin to watch the carnage. Wow. So this is a full 4-minute video, actually, of the whole thing here. And as you can see, oh, I literally just muted that. You saw me mute that. What is wrong with this? Right. So you've got a guy trying to get out of Dodge, knows that yeah, things are not looking good there. And yeah, it goes up in pretty spectacular fashion. You can see, I mean, how much debris has been thrown around by that, how much fire as a result of that one TEL being taken out with its munitions on board. And then here you have the drone just going, yeah, we're going to record this. Should we land on top of this thing? Let's take the mickey here. So they land on the back of the trailer and then just record it. Now, what I would imagine is that they would send up other drones to try and take out the rest of this kit. I don't know if this is salvageable. You don't know what happens later. As you can see here, secondary detonation going off there. I think it's pretty risky to put a drone on top of this, knowing that the thing it's on could well be combustible when it's sat right next to a burning surface-to-air missile launcher. But there you go. So that is what happened there. And that is a particular... Oh, there's a guy running around still in amongst the burning wreckage. So that is a really significant hit for the Ukrainians there. We don't see too many S-300s taken out these days. I would love to know how many they've got still functional. They had a lot of launchers. The problem with the launchers is they are rather contingent on the radars. If you take out the radars rather than the launchers, then actually the launchers are going to find it pretty difficult to do anything. So it really depends how many, you know, when you could say, oh, they've got hundreds of launchers still. How many radars do they have? This is a video from Ukraine's 63rd Mechanized Brigade, and it shows perfectly, says Tim White, how the drone catcher or interceptor drone works and gives you a comparison of the size, which also equates to the cost saving versus using missiles. So here is a drone interceptor. I have just muted that, 100% muted. Oh, brilliant, thank you. So here we have a short video of an interceptor drone doing its thing. And there you go, but you can see it filmed from above there, and I presume, I don't know what the trigger is there, because we see so many things. We see some Russian ones that have like lancers out the front with a kind of fuse and a very small explosive. So actually the lance gets buggered, but the drone itself is fine, and it's only kind of a relatively small explosion, but it's enough to blow the the drone out of the air, take out its wing, tail, whatever, or you have, you know, losing the entire, I mean, that obviously the whole drone exploded there, but it's whether it's like a proximity explosion or whether it rams into it or whatever. But anyway, you can see how much smaller the interceptor drone was than the Molnier. So this looks like a Molnier, and a successful interception there. Okay, moving on. We have Ukrainian. Oh no, yeah, that was what we were just looking at. Just it refreshed weirdly. Okay, the Ukrainian drone forces today struck the location of an enemy battalion of unmanned systems from the bars. So bars are like reserves. Kursk unit. Several Russian channels reported the battalion's repair shops and command posts were located on the territory of Solnishko children's camp. Now, I've only got Max 25's caption to go along with this. What I presume is what you're seeing in the video is the Russian repair shop and drone unit with quite a bit of kit, right? And you look at this going, oh my goodness, look at the number of drones here. This you want to blow up. If they blew this up, then that is phenomenal. It's going to, all of these drones would be used to attack Ukrainians, right? You've got all sorts of different drones. You've got some reconnaissance drones on the roof there. I don't know what they were. I didn't get a good enough look. Zala or something. Then you've got these FPV drones, and you've got goodness me, those are 4 FPV Mavics. No, not the 4 kind of Mavic drones turned into a vampire drone. I've never seen anything like that before. Let's have a look at that right from the beginning there. This one. So look at these. That's not. I'm sure they've just got a single drone. Yeah, they have. They taped 4 single drones and then put another one in the middle. So that is a 5 drone thing turned into one single drone. And yeah, wow. Anyway, I wonder whether the Ukrainians were somehow able to geolocate that from the video inside. I don't know, or from some other feature. Maybe they'd just gone outside or something. Anyway, I presume that was what was destroyed by the Ukrainian Defense Forces there. Then we get this video here of a boat near a place called Zalizhny Port. That's occupied Kherson on the coastline, on that southern coast before you get to Crimea. This is a weird video, and the reason why it's weird, apparently this is laser guided and taken out by Bayraktar drone. So that's worthy of note, partly why I'm including it here. But also, sometimes I do wonder about the videos because, I mean, I don't doubt this happened because otherwise there's no point uploading this. I don't think, I just wonder why it's been cut in the way it has. So you get this and you think, right, you're going to see a missile just slam into it. It zooms out a little bit. Oh, no, you do see the missile. Ah, it's when I was watching it on my phone. I couldn't see this. You actually do see the missile come from the bottom of the screen here. So we play that again. There it is. So there's the missile, quite a small missile, goes in and bang. But what I never understand why they cut it so quickly. So actually now that makes a lot more sense. You see the missile, but I don't understand why, because there's no way that spotted drone is suddenly, right, we've seen it just half explode. I'm going to stop recording now and let's go away. They're going to watch the rest of that. So I'm not quite sure why it gets cut there. And I always have to be slightly wary when you cut it so you don't get battle damage assessment. Quite often you see this for like high value bits of kit. So say like a HIMARS launcher. The Russians do this often where they're like tracking this HIMARS. They show it in position and then it getting hit. And then as soon as it gets hit, they're cut out. You're like, well, we don't know whether that was properly destroyed. And then you're thinking, well, if you cut it there, that means you didn't actually do the damage to it that you are claiming you did. Now here, it's clear that thing's exploded. I just don't know why it's cut there. Anyway, that's a long ramble. Right, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces confirmed they hit. And I never know, when they talk about special operations doing a mission and hitting a bit of kit, in this case, a fuel train near Jankoy Station. We hear that Jankoy Station was hit last night. Like with special forces, you think, oh, there's a team of people behind the lines and they've got some claymores and they're going around and they're laying some mines, and then they're running away, and then they're getting to a helicopter and getting extracted out of there, etc., etc. And that's not what happens. So special forces appear to have their own kind of missiles and drones, and they do drone things. But whether special forces means that they are drone crews that infiltrate behind enemy lines to do that, I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. But anyway, claim from Naval reports is Ukrainian special forces confirmed that they hit a Russian fuel train near Jankoy station in occupied Crimea last night during a night operation. The strike disrupted Russia's southern military grouping. And then we see imagery like this. So this is a train, obviously, in Russia coming up to Jankoy, Crimea. Jankoy, attack on a railway station. Or is it an attack on the train from the special forces? And is that the train just ahead that has been disabled? Who knows what's happened? Something has happened, and the special forces apparently are behind it. Constantine in just behind the front lines, really pretty much on the front lines these days, has been hit today by Russian FAB UMPKs, or guided glide bombs. Struck a market there where civilians were waiting for humanitarian aid. So there's another Russian war crime. Yeah, typical Russian activity there. Okay, we're now going to go on to what happened last night, and it was a huge night for Russian strikes on Ukraine. And it's probably a good time for me to bring up Dell's statistics here, because we're going to need to look a little bit at what took place last night in the context of what's happened over the last sort of month or so, or actually the context of the whole war. Okay, so a massive Russian drone and missile attack killed 1 and injured 18 in the Ukrainian cities far from the front line despite peace talks. It's not despite peace talks, it's because of peace talks. I find the timing of this interesting. We're expecting big attacks a couple of nights ago when they were talking, then a night later when they had other meetings. You know, you had the bilateral meetings, and you had all sorts. You had Alaska. Any number of times where this would have been super symbolic to hit. And I think there is no coincidence it was actually the night after talks, because Russia loves symbolism, and they love to just stick 2 fingers up to Ukraine and the Western world when they're having these meetings about the outcome of the war. But I think they also recognise, for example, if they'd done this on the night of the Alaska meetings, it would have really annoyed Trump. And actually, if they'd done it on the night or at the time when Trump was actually meeting, because of the time difference, you have the nighttime going on over here in Ukraine, and in the US, you've got the time when they're meeting. So if Trump had been meeting with these European leaders and saw like a massive attack of 600 drones and a bunch of missiles on Ukraine at the time of these meetings, he would have gone. It would have actually worked in the opposite direction. What they've done is they've had the meetings, and then they hit. And then they're like, screw you guys, we're going to massively attack you. So I think the timing is significant. Right, what do we understand took place? So 574 drones were sent into Ukraine, and a massively successful interception rate of 546, 95% success rate in taking out the drones. That is huge. We have seen some days recently where you've got 50% success rate because they're throwing them right at the front line. These go all the way to Lviv, and like I've said to you a million times before, the longer drones are in the air, the more time you've got to take them out, acquire them as targets. If they're shot just over the border into Kharkiv, or shot just from behind the contact line into Constantine, you've got no time to react, and you don't have air defenses sat on the front lines, right? So the interception rates for those sorts of attacks are very low. The interception rates for attacks, these kind of traditional attacks on the industrial military complex and whatnot, that's right in the west of Ukraine, you generally have really good interception rates. And this is what's borne out here. So as terrible as the strikes were last night, actually there isn't that much footage of massive destruction. One presumes because the Ukrainians did an incredible job of taking these drones out. So almost 600 drones sent, and then you have a whole bunch of missiles. So let's have a look. 4 hypersonic Kinjal missiles, 1 was taken out. 2 thought to be Iskander-M ballistic missiles, none were taken out. 12 out of the 14 caliber cruise missiles, 18 out of 19 KH-101 cruise missiles, and then an unknown missile that was unsuccessfully taken down. So This gives you, let's do some quick maths. You've got 20, 39, 40 missiles. Right, so you've got 574 drones and 40 missiles. Now, I have been saying for a long time that, get rid of my head for those that don't like it. I've been saying for a long time that the numbers are definitely showing that Ukrainians have done a really good job of taking out the Russian missile and drone production and logistics, because you have not got a night like last night happening routinely enough. So they are either stockpiling for a massive attack, or they were stockpiling for a massive attack, but actually the massive attack wouldn't have I think if the Russians were making at the capacity they claim for drones, Shahed drones from Yelabuga, then you would have seen, I think, still more attacks subsequent to what we've seen, bigger attacks subsequent to what we've seen last night previously. Okay, let's look at the missiles. 40 missiles were sent last night. When you look back at the history of the war, right, 40 missiles is not that much. Okay, we have got 112 missiles getting intercepted here. So I don't know how many missiles were sent. Let's say, I don't know, 140 missiles or something like that sent at this point back in the war. You've got several over 100, several nights of over 100 intercepted. I reported yesterday that the Operation Spiderweb significantly, according to the Ukrainians, has significantly reduced the number of missiles the Russians are able to fire. And that is, I think, shown by last night. So you are getting lower numbers of the missiles at the moment sent more frequently, which may suggest that there isn't a huge effect on the. I think there has been an effect on the construction of missiles. I think they've been working hard to take out missile components, manufacturing facilities. But even if they haven't, I think what you're seeing is less more often. So every night a few missiles sent, or most nights like 10 to 20 missiles sent, and occasionally 40, but never more than 40 these days recently, not since Operation Spiderweb. And that suggests that they might have the missiles, but they don't have the carriers. They don't have the ability to fire them. And then when you look at the Black Sea Fleet and how that's been constrained to Novorossiysk, and maybe the loading facilities there aren't so good, the issues with it not being Sevastopol. So that's one thing. So I think unable to fire missiles whilst also having had some constraints put on the missile production is my conclusion for missiles. Now, when it comes to drones, you can see last night was a huge drone night. Large number of drones intercepted. It says 315. I don't know. That's because it comes from, right, just to let you understand why the figures are lower, because this comes from the general staff figures. As you can see, 315 is listed there because a massive night attack, like a 600 drone night attack, I forgot about this, and I was wondering why the nights of 324 over here were not like 500 and 600 drones. And it's because they have a cutoff point in the middle of the night for the statistics, and so that they can get the stats out early morning Ukrainian times. But what happens is when they get those stats in, the attacks are still happening. So usually any stats refer to halfway through the previous night. So these stats from last night refer to halfway through last night, and I'm going to make this up. Let's say they cut it off at 3 in the morning. So it goes from 3 in the morning the night before. So you get the leftover ones from the night before, and then the early and main attacks from the last night, but not the ones that get left over after 3 o'clock. Which means that if the Ukrainians took out 574 drones, or 574 drones were sent, they took out 546 or whatever it was. Why are there only 315? Because almost half of them took place after they've finished compiling the stats, and they will turn up on tomorrow's stats. Okay, but essentially taking that into account, we've still got this more sizable gap here on the right-hand side of the of the graph. Now, we've had a couple of heavy nights. There were 200 odd sent the night before, or is it the night before that? Anyway, the last 72 hours, you've had almost 1,000 drones. So that is a degree of stockpiling, but I also think, considering they're ramping up, so don't compare this to like back here, because they didn't have the production capacity back here. What they've done at Yellow is extraordinary. I mean, that Yellow construction and logistics site is freaking massive, right? They are pumping out Shaheds, or at least they're trying to pump out Shaheds at a massive rate of knots at the moment. But the Ukrainians have been hitting the supply chain. And I think that even when they do stockpile, you are still seeing less than what it would have been. I'm pretty sure they would be able to send 500 Shahed drones every couple of nights, certainly several times a week, and you're not seeing that at the moment. So although last night there were a lot of drones sent, and I said that they're unable to do that so much at the moment, like last night doesn't disprove what I was saying. It still fits into the pattern I was saying. Their production rates are massive, or potentially massive, but they are unable to produce as many as consistently as they would hope at the moment because of Ukrainian strikes. But a lot of missiles sent last night. I say a lot, it's only 40. 40 sounds like a lot, but in the context of the whole war, 40 missiles being sent is not a huge number of missiles. Let's see where all of these went. So massive Russian missile and drone attack. A Russia attack with 574 drones and 40 missiles. Russia attacked Uzhhorod, as well as very close to the border. So there were areas close to the border that were targeted, and areas close to the front line too. Russian attacks reached Uzhhorod as well, very close to the border. Yep, and American plant producing electronics was hit. We're going to talk about that in a second. 15 people injured there. It's purely a civilian object. In Lviv, 1 person killed, 3 injured, dozens of residential buildings damaged. Dnipropetrovsk region, a man was injured. There was damage after a drone attack. Zaporizhia, blast wave damaged residential buildings. Kyiv region was under drone attack. Air raid alert was still on at the time of writing this. In Rivne, there's smoke in the city after Russia attacked it with Kinzhal missiles and drones. Lutsk was attacked by missiles and drones. Okay, so this is, as you can see, where they were sent. So lots of missiles sent right back to here. And we're going to look at that in a second, because I presume that's Uzhhorod, where I believe an American business enterprise was hit, and the claim is it was fully civilian. Then you've got Lviv, Lutsk, Rivne. You've got Sumy. What do we have? Dnipro, Zaporizhia, and I presume is that Constantinivka? She looks a bit north of there. Anyway, close to the front line up there. So a whole range of places hit, but many of them far into the west. We've got another visualization there. You can see the focus on the west of Ukraine, but I think that must have been done somewhat earlier. So we've got 4 Kinzhal missiles sent in the Rivne region, 2 Zircons from occupied Crimea, 12 caliber. Yeah, so we've seen all those stats already. What do we have? So the western city of Lviv, Russia attacked that overnight with 26 private homes were damaged, roofs were torn off, windows broken, vehicles damaged, kindergarten damaged. 1 person was killed, unfortunately, in the attacks on Lviv. And you can see some images there. Now, quite often when they attack the west, you can rest assured that they are mainly going to be going for the industrial military complex. Often airfields as well, such as in Khmelnytsky, Starokonstantinov airfield there. But we also don't hear about exactly what was damaged when they do this. Like, most things were shot down, so you assume there wasn't too much damage, but some missiles got through, Kinzhals got through. We're going to talk about this Mukachevo facility in Zakarpattia, which is almost certainly this area down here, although Zakarpattia, yeah. Anyway, it could well be that Russia was able to hit with some of those missiles important industrial military complex targets. Capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, was under attack, as you can see from some footage from last night, from Russian drones. Ukrainian air defense was active in Kyiv, as I'm sure it was in a number of places. Huge fire raging after drones attacked Pavlohrad in the Dnipropetrovsk region. I showed you Dnipro as well. Seems certain gas storage facilities have been hit. So yet again, as we saw in Odessa, the Russians, I think, very keen to take out Ukraine's energy infrastructure because Ukraine has been doing that to Russia, and Russia have been really hurting. It has been a massive success of the Ukrainians. We're going to come on to look at this in a second. Fuel prices have spiked. 13% capacity has been hit. This is a real challenge for the Russians. So the Russians, I think, retributively, maybe strategically, also going for Ukraine's energy infrastructure as well. Okay, this was a place that was hit in Zakarpattia region. Zakarpattia, I think. Before and after Russia attacked an American company, Flex, in Ukraine. Wake up, America. This is where the red carpet in Alaska took you, says Jonas Bergman there. So this is this American company, Flex, that was absolutely hammered last night. US-owned electronics factory in Mukachevo was targeted in last night's Russian drone strikes, according to Ukraine's Center for Counter and Disinformation head Andrei Kovalenko. The fully civilian site had 600 workers on shift. Thankfully, all were evacuated safely, and that is, what's left of the site. Now, the question is going to be, was it definitely civilian? I know the Ukrainians are saying it's civilian. Who knows? Russia struck the territory of the Flex plant in Mukachevo. A large-scale fire broke out there, covering an area of 7,000 square meters. According to preliminary reports, 15 people there were injured. And even Zelensky has talked about this. Quote, they used multiple cruise missiles against an American factory producing everyday appliances like coffee machines. That's a target for Russia too. Very telling. So Zelensky formally claiming that this is an attack on civilian infrastructure, and that's not cool. So it hit by 2 Caliber cruise missiles by all accounts. So the Flex company, according to Anton Gerashenko, produces electronic devices like fitness trackers, health monitors, coffee machines, and cooperating with brands such as Nike, Google, and Lenovo. So components for those manufacturers. It'd be interesting to see what Russia claims they were aiming for there. And the sad impact of Sumy University being struck the other day, the terrible photos of that huge building, that U-shaped building that was absolutely hammered by the Russians. 15,000 books burned in the library of Sumy State University due to a Russian attack. Since April 2025, the university has lost 45,000 books. A total of 60,000 copies have been destroyed. This is the cultural impact of a war. We have the human impact, the ecological impact, but we have the cultural impact as well. Horrible stuff. Fiery night across Russia. So, all things considered, not that much battle damage assessment imagery coming out from Ukraine in terms of what Russia have successfully done in striking Ukraine, other than that, a couple of the places we just looked at. Ukraine did attack Russia last night in a number of key places. A fiery night across Russia and occupied Crimea, says no reports. A power facility was hit in Voronezh, leaving villages in the dark. Explosions rocked Sevastopol near a Russian naval base. Drones struck the Novoshaktinsk oil refinery in Rostov, and railway infrastructure was hit near occupied Jankoy. So that's what we know. More could have happened, but no reports is reporting that because we know from imagery that's come out. So, for example, this is again another summary. Fires confirmed by NASA. The firm's data. Russia says it downed 49 drones, but the damage tells another story, says Euromaidan Press, and that is imagery, I believe, from Novoshaktinsk. Here you can see it. Ukrainian strike campaign against Russian oil infrastructure continues. There's a fire at the Novoshaktinsk oil refinery located in Rostov Oblast following a Ukrainian drone attack last night. This is the largest refinery in southern Russia, so a very significant blow possibly to the Russian hydrocarbons infrastructure. You can see the firm's data shows significant fire there in over a large area of that refinery. One of last night's Ukrainian targets, a Novoshaktinsk oil refinery in Russia, with a capacity of 5 million tons annually. It's a key piece of Russian energy infrastructure, now under serious pressure. Firm's data confirms big fires at the refinery. So that's adding to the 13% of the capacity that's already been hit. Novoshaktinsk oil products plant was hit. Drones also struck a drone warehouse and a logistics hub in Donetsk. That might be the one we've already talked about. In addition, a hit was recorded on the area of fuel and lubricants base in the Voronezh region. That seems separate from a substation that was hit as well. So footage shows a substation on fire. Ukraine struck a 110-35 kilovolt traction substation, causing train delays and reportedly even forcing Russia to temporarily disconnect reactor number 7 at the Novovoronezh nuclear power plant. So that's very significant. Struck in Zhuravka-Voronezh region, part of the Zhuravko-Milarovo rail line built to bypass Ukraine. Voronezh is a key hub on Russia's southeastern railway. So that is, again, a very particular strike there. That is, again, looking to harm Russian railway logistics. Even though it's a power substation, you might think, the electric locomotive logistics would have been network would have really been harmed by that. So then there were strikes around Sevastopol in Crimea. 2 powerful explosions rocked Sevastopol around 3:35 in the morning near the Pivdeny airfield on Cape Chersones, likely hitting a Russian Black Sea Fleet military site. Fires broke out at the scene, confirmed by firms' data as well. So fairly significant fires there. Could well be an air defense battery or something. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that has been caught on camera. So there's evidence of that and firms' data as well. And not just there, but in Jankoy, we also saw that. So that's in Crimea. We also saw that railway train or station being hit. I'm not quite sure. We saw yesterday a drone strike in Belgorod, just across the border into Belgorod. Fire after a drone strike there. Not sure what was hit, but something was hit in Russian Belgorod. And we're going to finish this section off with talk about flamingos. Now, this is all resultant from an Associated Press video of a secret Flamingo missile construction facility somewhere in Ukraine. And it has some very revealing data in it that we can refer to, both visual data and claim data. So, new Ukrainian FP5 Flamingo missile. So that's the one with 3,000 kilometers of range, 1,000 kilograms of payload. This is a big old bit of kit. New FP5 Flamingo missile with that range claimed that one missile is currently being produced a day, but according to the company, the missile can travel 3,000 kilometers, land within 14 meters of the target, so it's got a CEP of 14 meters, which is pretty good for a missile that goes 3,000 kilometers, thank you very much, and delivering a payload of 1,150 kilograms. Now, they say one missile is being produced a day, but actually they're saying it's going to be ramped up to 7 missiles a day. Where do I have that? I've got this somewhere. Yeah, so if we bring this one forward, Firepoint is producing, so that's FP Firepoint, is producing roughly 1 Flamingo per day, and by October, so that's 1 month's time, they hope to build the capacity up to make 7 per day, according to their Chief Technical Officer, Irina Terek, to the Associated Press. Now, more data as well. So, Ukraine has successfully tested it, plans to begin mass production by late 2025. It's got 1 a day at the moment. That's not mass production, but that is significant, and we're going to look at another data point in a second, or early 2026. So maybe if they can get 7 a day in October, then wow. President Zelensky confirmed we'll speak more once we have hundreds ready to use. So this, I've said this will be a game changer. Honestly, if they can scale this and they're resilient, to electronic warfare, then this is a game changer for Ukraine. It really is. And this is what I asked for 3.5 years ago. When I started the war, I said Ukraine wins by using long distance missiles and drones. You don't want to expend human life. And so therefore you have to destroy the Russians from a distance, and you stop them doing war by stop them being able to do war. So they need this capability. And when the Americans and allies such as the Taurus missile, Americans with other of their missiles, were very reluctant to give missiles. Eventually ATACMS came, but by that time they'd moved everything out of range of ATACMS. It was really frustrating because these missiles could have been the key to Ukraine's success. If we'd gone hard on missiles and given them to Ukraine and then helped them get these up and running earlier in the war, then things could have been different. Now, what else can we learn? So Ukraine's Firepoint startup produces also FP1 drones costing $55,000 each. Now, I don't know what the FP1 drones look like, but they now apparently make up 60% of strikes inside Russia hitting oil refineries and depots. So when you're looking at Novoshakhtinsk last night, when you're looking at that strike in Voronezh at a substation, is that this $55,000 FP1 drone? And I don't know which in this video it is, but wow, that is cheap and freaking effective. You want to be producing an absolute ton of those bad boys. They're responsible for 60% of strikes inside Russia. Wow. And then this is the other data point I wanted to point out. So these look to be, parts of, this is the FP5 Flamingo, right? It's unfinished. This is part of the production process. It looks rather like the Doodlebug in kind of form here that the Germans sent in against London in the Blitz. But what's important here, you've got 479 and 480 on the side of these two missiles. Now that would hint that there are 478 other Flamingo missiles. Now, how many were involved in testing? How many they got through? Does it take hundreds to test these things? Do they have, as Zelensky said, get back to me when we've got hundreds waiting to go. Do they already have that? Are these numbers, are they referring to the number that they have produced? And if they are, where are the others? Are they using them at the moment? Or do they have a couple of hundred Flamingos ready to go to town on Russia at some point? That, again, that would be a game changer. Imagine 200 Flamingo missiles with 3,000 kilometer range waiting to go. I mean, this is where I get all hopium copium. But I think if they had a night of 200 Flamingos flying and hitting really crucial targets deep inside Russia, that could take out their entire strike fleet of Tupolev bombers. Then suddenly Russia are struggling to send any cruise missiles into Ukraine. That's what I mean by game changer. I'm really hopeful about this, but this to me is one of the biggest bits of news out of Ukraine for the last year, really. Like in terms of weaponry. I mean, it all depends how good they are and whether it's all true what we're hearing. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. A Ukrainian man allegedly involved in the Nord Stream gas pipeline bombings has been detained in Rimini, Italy. I played at Rimini. I played Ultimate Frisbee, Beach Ultimate Frisbee. I was at the World Beach Ultimate Championships for 2 years when I used to be able to move before I got MS. So I've been to Rimini a bunch of times. Lovely little place. Beach Ultimate there is hard. I tell you what, it's hard running for an entire weekend of sports on sand. Your thighs burn, man. You burn like muscle burn. Anyway, German prosecutors have detained, that's relevant, have detained someone in Rimini, Italy, who's a Ukrainian prosecutor's office claim he was involved in the gas pipeline bombings operation, which the Wall Street Journal believes was carried out by Ukrainians. So possibly more on that at some point. Interesting moral political dilemma, that one, if it is the Ukrainians. An ecological disaster in occupied Melitopol and beyond. The main river, the Molochna, has almost died, report locals, with Russians making it worse. It's been lower since the Russians blew the Novokakhovka Dam. Efforts to improve the flow have been stupid, disturbing the bed and mixing up clay. So, yeah, there's a bit of an ecological disaster. There's a water problem for the Russians right across occupied regions of Ukraine. And I wonder, whether what's behind this as well, whether it's, weather or poor management or lack of investment. But Russian agriculture update is showing that a fifth Russian region, so another 4 have done so, has declared a state of emergency due to crop problems. This is the Omsk region. In 7 districts of the region, the soil is overwatered. So this is not a lack of water, but too much water. And of course, we have seen some horrendous floods and rainfall taking place over the early to midsummer period. But the authorities of the Omsk region are introducing the state of emergency throughout the region due to difficult weather conditions that threaten the harvest. Now, this is bad news for the world because Russia is one of the breadbaskets of the world, along with Ukraine, and this then affects people's ability to get enough food. It will send the price of food up, but it also will affect Russia's ability to make money, right? And so, this could have an economic impact on Russia. Now, Ukrainian attacks have disrupted Russian gasoline supplies, pushing up prices, according to Financial Times. As we know, wholesale gasoline prices in Russia have hit record highs twice in a row since August the 4th, surpassing the September 2023 highs when they were last kind of attacking the Russian hydrocarbon industry. Prices for A95 on the St. Petersburg exchange rose to 82,300 rubles per ton. That's up 55%. At least 10% of refining capacity is out of order. Rail strikes are causing delays and disrupting fuel logistics. Partially destroyed rail infrastructure and logistics have increased demand for road transport. Russia's banned all gasoline exports on July the 28th, tightening previous restrictions. Shortages and high prices persist, with gasoline being sold by coupon in some regions. So you've got rationing tickets. The ban on gasoline exports increased domestic supplies by 150,000 tons, but did not stop the rise in prices. Diesel was less affected, but regional disruptions are possible at least until September, says Max25, summarizing the FT there. Anton Gerashenko shows this video. There are loads of these videos of people passing massive, like kilometers long lines of people waiting to get fuel at fuel stations, petrol stations. That's the line, says this guy, right on the effing road. I won't even have enough gas, enough petrol to wait it out. So we are having trucks apparently running out of petrol, waiting to get petrol or diesel. Russia and Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories are experiencing a significant gas shortage after drone strikes on oil refineries. Just look at the length of this line along the road there. It's absolutely incredible. And here's another video of trucks waiting and them running out of fuel waiting. Here, Max25 says, Russia massive problems with gasoline and diesel fuel begin at gas stations in many regions. This footage shows the Moscow-Rostov-on-Don Krasnodar highway. The reason for the shortage is attacks on oil depots. Absolutely incredible. And then moving on, we have the Moscow Times reporting the Minister of Energy of Primorye stated that local residents themselves are to blame for the shortage of gasoline. Yeah, of course, it's your fault. There's a shortage of gasoline, not the Ukrainians bombing the crap out of refineries and depots. Okay, moving on to a little bit of like peace negotiations. New York Times reports that Marco Rubio will hold consultations today with national security advisors from Ukraine and European countries on future security guarantees for Kyiv. I was talking a lot about this last night. US Secretary of State will have to find a balance between the position of Trump and the need to assure Zelensky that support will be provided. He must convince allies in Europe that even the unpredictable Trump will fulfill his promises to help defend Ukraine without direct NATO participation. The issue of the legal force of such guarantees has also been discussed, in particular whether the agreement will require congressional approval. New York Times reports that possible guarantees include a US promise to provide air support in the event of a renewed Russian offensive, assistance in intelligence and surveillance, as well as the involvement of the US Navy to block Russian control of the Black Sea and access to the Danube. So, like I said yesterday, air and sea, but particularly air, are the most important components, in my opinion, there. So don't underestimate the importance of the US being involved in air support there. Andriy Yermak from the President's office has said over 1,000 days of war, and Russia's only taken 1% of Ukraine, while suffering huge losses. So since the initial kind of what they've taken, just the last 1,000 days, just 1% of Ukraine has been taken. We must understand we are not losing and Russia is not winning. Now, I was having a chat to Pierre last night. We had a WhatsApp call, a bunch of us. So we're going to be hopefully driving some trucks out to Ukraine sometime in the near distant future. And Pierre and I, this is really interesting. It was like, he gets this feeling, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, he gets this feeling that Ukraine is losing at the moment. He's quite down on it, but quite up with some of the latest things that have happened. And this is what we do. All of us go through this up and down, up and down. And I made the point, and I don't know if this is correct, but I think this is how I see the war, which is Ukraine is losing and Russia is losing. The question is, who is losing more? and it's a game of attritional chicken. I think I've made this point before, but they're both losing people that you can't regenerate. Now, you can regenerate equipment. Ukraine is regenerating equipment itself by having investment in its defense industrial base, but also getting a lot of stuff from allies. Russia isn't. It's getting help from China and North Korea. So it is to some degree, but I don't think it's able to fulfill the manufacturing requirements that it needs. And so my sense is Ukraine isn't, no one's winning, right? Ukraine is losing territory and losing people, but Russia is gaining territory but losing even more people and was losing even more equipment. Now the equipment dynamic has shifted, but it could be that Ukraine is more able to lose combat assets because it's producing and receiving more combat assets than Russia is producing and receiving. And so it's a kind of this attritional loss rate where it's all about the ratio. And I did talk about this earlier in the war. It's like, as long as Ukraine can guarantee losing their stuff and people at a rate that is far better than the Russian rate, then it's a game of attritional chicken. And if allies can help sustain Ukraine enough, then it's about time. So then you start bringing in the economy for Russia. And if the economy is tanking, yes, the Ukrainian economy is in trouble. But if it's being sustained by allies, yeah, we can talk about debt going forward, and that's going to be an issue in decades to come. But right now, if Ukraine can maintain its economy where it is, and the Russian economy is, again, economic attrition. So it's just attritional chicken. Who loses the most, the quickest, to the point where they have to bail? Who will bail first? That's, I think, how to best understand the war at the moment. Now, moving on, Anne Applebaum is incandescent, I think, with... Well, she's indignant over what Steve Witkoff has done. So remember, Steve Witkoff went and met Putin somewhat recently in a meeting that achieved virtually nothing because Steve Witkoff. But he got trolled by the Russians. So Putin gave him a Medal of Honor to give to a CIA operative who was a mother of a child who's ended up fighting for the Russians and dying. And actually, this was an insult, but Steve Witkoff, I don't think, realised this at the time. But he's actually gone and handed that to the parents. And CNN have released an article on this. Witkoff delivered the medal, Russian medal from Putin to family of American who was killed fighting for Russia in 2024. And some people are just saying that this is just an ultimate kind of insult. I'm not sure. It's bad. It's just bad optics, this whole thing. Like accepting that medal. It should not have been accepted. It was like, we're not accepting that. We're getting a bloody Medal of Honor for one of our guys dying fighting in a meat grinder for you losers. Yeah, so, of course, our whole family's heartbroken for the loss. It's just an insult. I'd imagine if I was a CIA operative, with at least assuming I had a fair grasp of reality, if Steve Witkoff came to my house with that medal, I'd say, with all due respect, Mr. Witkoff, you can take that medal and you can shove it so far up your arse that it's coming out your mouth, mate. Because I don't ever want to think about that medal or about Russia ever again, you bastard. It's how I'd react, but, I haven't lost my child and I don't know how they would react. On the medal front, as you all know, I'm Legend of the Multiverse. I mean, this is well established because I awarded it to myself several years back. I upgraded it from Legend of the Universe to Legend of the Multiverse. I can do that. It's my award. No one can do anything about that, so screw you. I love this. So I think that the Ukrainians have been looking at my videos, as you would imagine they would, and have said, Legend, that's an awesome award. We can do that. So for the historical special operation Spiderweb that was really successful, Zelensky has awarded the SBU team the National Legend Award. That's my kind of award. The FPV drones hit 34% of all Russian strategic aviation. We've actually mentioned that today. Which the enemy used to attack Ukraine. Russia suffered losses of over $7 billion. they get a National Legend Award. Love it. Brilliant. Awesome. And I'm going to read you just to finish with, like, when we're talking about ceasefires, this is, Andrew Perpetua sometimes has these threads that are so on the nose. I love it. And here he's got one talking about ceasefires. Ceasefires are often interpreted by people in the media as being the end result rather than being a means of negotiation. Ceasefire is a tool, and it's being used to illustrate Russia's problematic position. So he says it's so wild watching American media and listening to the conversations because the news people have no understanding of Ukraine or Russia at all. They genuinely believe that a ceasefire is the path, and they do not understand that ceasefires are being used to trap Putin. I do not get any sense listening to them that it is propaganda or manipulation. They genuinely believe this, which means they fundamentally lack understanding of the negotiations going on or what the goals are, which is scary because it's their job to inform the public. Basically, these news people get told that the negotiation is about peace and they do not look into it any further. And that's now reality to them, completely overlooking the cat and mouse game going on where they are trying to force Putin to admit he doesn't want peace. It's the same with the meetings, right? If we get a bilateral meeting with Putin, like, I'm pretty sure that Zelensky knows that will never happen. So he goes, I'm totally up for this meeting, even though he probably doesn't want to meet Putin. But he knows that Putin's going to say no. So if you say, I'm up for it, then it makes Putin look bad. And the same with ceasefires. So Putin is doing everything in his power to keep lying and saying he does want peace. They are trying to force Putin to talk to Zelensky in person, which would force Putin to formally recognize Zelensky as the president of Ukraine, something that he's always refused to do. And I talked about this in the video yesterday. It is the media's job to explain this shit to the public using simple language and metaphors and visual cues and whatever the hell else to explain to their audience in a way they will understand, but they themselves don't even understand it. The media is not in a good spot. Good way to end it. Thank you for watching. Take care. It's been too long. Goodbye.